We are about to begin the Veterans History Project interview. My name is Tony Kierna. I am the genealogy coordinator of the Schaumburg Township District Library in Schaumburg, Illinois. I will be interviewing Emil Pribula, Army Air Corps, World War II veteran, regarding his military service. By the way, the Army Air Corps was a branch of the United States military before it became the U.S. Air Force in 1947. Today's date is February the 18th, 2020. The interview is being conducted in the Prairie Room Conference Room in Friendship Village, which is a continuing care community in Schaumburg, Illinois. No one else is present in the room. Emil, thank you for participating in the Veterans History Project, and thank you for your military service. It is a privilege and an honor to be able to interview you.
You're welcome.
All right, well, we generally start with your background and your early life. What year were you born?
1923.
Okay, and where were you born?
Chicago.
Okay, and which part of Chicago did you live in?
The south side. It was about 1500 south.
Okay, okay. And how about your parents? Who are they?
Oh, my father was a pastor. He was a Slovak Lutheran pastor, and he had a church at that location, 1500 south. I think it was honorary. I was only 4 years old at the time.
Okay.
But my mother was a pastor's wife.
Okay. And did you have brothers and sisters?
I had two older brothers, an older sister, two younger brothers, and a younger sister. I was the middle child.
Okay. And where did you go to school?
Well, I went to school in Posen, Illinois, for the grade school.
Okay.
High school, I went in Harvey, Illinois.
Okay.
And I didn't go to college because there was depression, and only 15% of our graduating class went on to college.
Wow.
I could afford it.
Amazing. Did you have like any hobbies as a child? Did you like to do certain things when you were growing up?
Well, I liked to draw, and I liked sports. I liked to play baseball.
Okay. What position did you play?
Second base.
Now, I mean, I'm just interjecting a little bit here because I know when I grew up I played shortstop and I loved it. So did you play Little League?
No, it was softball.
Okay.
It was 12-inch ball.
Okay.
Fast pitching, though.
Okay. And were you playing that in the neighborhood where you grew up?
Yeah, with the other teenagers. We had a teenage team. And it wasn't associated with any school or anything or park district. We just formed a team on our own, and we played opposite teams in other towns around us.
Okay. And did you live your entire time in Chicago at this time?
No.
Where did you go?
Well, we moved to Hazleton, Pennsylvania when I was 4 years old.
Okay.
My father had the call from the church there, and it only lasted about 2 years because of the depression.
Okay.
They had difficulty maintaining enough salary for them with 7 kids.
Wow.
And people were bringing food to the home, you know. You know, fresh garden, salad garden.
That's interesting. So how long did you stay in Pennsylvania?
Let's see, it was 1927. I'd say two years.
Okay. And then where did you go after that?
Well, my father came back to Illinois to see if he could find another church there. And 2 of my brothers had been sent to my relatives in Dixmoor, Illinois, because to maintain that budget for food and things like that. So they went ahead and lived with relatives.
It sounded like the times were tough.
Very tough. Yeah, my mother had to take care of the kids alone. She came back to Chicago with us kids. And I can remember trying to make a transfer at Pittsburgh on the train.
Okay.
And we almost missed the train. I can remember my mother running with the baby after the train because it started moving. And all the kids too.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So you came back to Illinois.
Right.
And did you still go back to high school then, or were you?
No, I was in second grade at the time.
Oh, okay. So you came back when you were still very young.
Right.
Okay. And then you went to high school, and things were sort of in the world getting really difficult at that time and stuff. Do you remember much about the announcement when we went into war with Pearl Harbor, the attack on Pearl Harbor?
I was listening to the Bears game on the radio, and I was working on a project for my friend. He had a project in high school, and he asked me to do some drawing for him. So I was working on that, and they made the announcement on the radio, interrupted the game, the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. That's all they said.
I mean, at the time, probably they just didn't know enough information to share all the details.
I just interrupted the game just for that announcement.
Wow.
And I thought, where the heck is Pearl Harbor?
There you go.
And that's millions of people thought that.
Yeah.
But right after the game, they had more details.
Okay. And what did you think of what happened there? Was there like a lot of turmoil then going on? Like was anything going on, the fact that we might be entering the war at that time?
Well, I figured we'd be at war when something like that happens. And Roosevelt announced that we were at war, also with Germany.
And what did you think about what was going to maybe happen to you? Because you were like, what, 18 years old at the time?
I was 18 out of high school, and I couldn't go to college, couldn't afford it. Went to work because, well, my mother needed support too.
Mm-hmm. Where did you go to work?
I started at Hills Brothers Coffee. That was downtown Chicago. And I lived in Blue Island, which was 30 miles away.
Wow.
So I had to take the train every day back and forth.
How did you wind up getting a job for Hills Brothers?
Well, the class principal called me in when I was in high school. And he said they're looking for a clerk at this company downtown. Didn't know whether I wanted to go downtown or not. He got the information from the bank clerk in the merchandise mart.
Wow, that's amazing. So how was it? It must have been a hard thing even getting to work then, 30 miles on the train.
I started at $70 a month. And my monthly ticket was $9.
Oh, wow.
And the bus was 10 cents each way to the train. So there wasn't too much left.
Were you living in your old neighborhood at the time, or was that in another? Oh, you said Blue Island you were living at that time.
Well, at that time, we were living in, Blue Island.
Okay. So now with everything going on with the possibility of war, and you being at the age that you were at 18, was there a big draft going on, getting all the young men into the military?
Well, my friends were going in, and my one friend, Billy, said he was going to go into the Air Force, or Air Corps, and he asked if I was going to join. I said, no, I have to work, support my mother. So I did try to enlist. I was working for about a month and a half, and two of the fellows from the office said they were going to the Chicago University for a course in medical corps, and with the possibility of going into the medical corps. So that sounded pretty good to me. But when I got back to the office and told the manager that I was going to enlist, he became hysterical.
Really? Because he was losing a lot of people up there.
Right.
So what ultimately happened then? Were you just sort of waiting till something else happened?
Well, I finally got drafted.
Ah, okay.
I was going to enlist in October of 42,
Okay.
but then in January 43, I got the notice to report.
Okay. And so did you know at that time you were going to be in the Army or the Army Air Corps? Did you know?
No, I was just drafted, so they would put you anywhere.
Okay.
In fact, I ended up in a distribution center, Rockford, Illinois, Camp Grant at the time. And when they found out I could type, they kept me there. They kept me there for 2 months working in the dispensary, just typing up records, shot records and x-ray records, things like that. And I found out that if you're held for 2 months, that you can request a branch of service you want to serve it. They couldn't keep you more than 2 months because they would have to permanently assign you.
Wow. Now, had you gone to basic training at this time or no?
Well, I was supposed to go to basic training. Ended up at St. Petersburg, Florida. Oh, when I went into the captain, I said I would like to request the branch of service since I've been here for 2 months. And he didn't even look up from his desk. He says, East Coast or West Coast?
Oh, jeez.
I said, it doesn't matter, sir. And he says, well, I ended up in Florida.
Okay, so that was your basic training in Florida.
St. Petersburg. We were in tents. We were living in tents on a golf course. Took over the golf course, and we stayed in tents doing a basic training. But they interrupted my basic training and took us right off the field and shipped us to Oklahoma.
Okay, and why did they do that?
Oklahoma A&M. They had a school at the university. It was engineering and operations. It was to prepare us for working in a hangar and maintaining records of the planes and so forth. So, but we were there for 10 weeks in training, but they worked around the clock. The teachers, the professors conducted the classes. And it was, we were on the shift from 4 o'clock in the afternoon until midnight.
Wow. I mean, it sounded like they really need to turn around very quickly, so they were operating 24 hours a day to get everybody through the process.
And they shipped me to Mitchell Field, New York, on Long Island.
Okay.
And I was there for, good 10 months.
And what were you doing at Mitchell Field in New York?
I was working in a headquarters squadron for the 1st Fighter Command in the 1st Air Force.
Oh, okay. Wow. And so did you think that you were going to get to be sent overseas yet, or were you just sort of waiting and doing what they needed to be done?
I just stayed there as long as I was needed, but there was rumors that they were going to condense some of the squadrons, and I figured, well, I'll sign up for aviation cadet.
Okay.
But while I was waiting to be assigned, they washed out the program. They had enough pilots, co-pilots, bombardiers, and navigators, commissioned officers. So I thought, well, I'll sign up for the Gunnery School. And sure enough, they had plenty of room for gunners.
Wow.
So they eventually wound up in Florida.
Okay.
But
there was something that we talked about when we met you. What did you do in New York that you went for some recreation, and you were some photographer wanted to
Oh.
find you or something?
Well,
What
I
happened there?
I went to the USO.
Okay.
Every time I went to New York, I went to the USO because they had free tickets for Broadway shows, Carnegie Hall, Metropolitan Opera. So I took advantage of that. I was standing in line waiting for a ticket, and a woman from Red Cross came up to me and said, "How would you like your picture taken?" I said, "Oh, sure, why not?" So they put me with a Marine and a girl from the Navy and a sailor from the Navy.
Okay.
The four of us. They took our picture, and they said it would become a picture on a billboard. It was life-size cutout that they had. They put on a billboard at Times Square.
Okay.
And it was a promotion from Red Cross, buy bonds or something like that, with a thermometer.
So you were famous for a little while.
Yeah, on Times Square. I tried to take a picture, but I couldn't get in the street. It was too busy.
Wow.
I went there early in the morning, and the sun was rising right behind the billboard, so it didn't come out.
Oh,
too good.
Geez. That's pretty amazing. So when you were, in New York, now you were going to go to Gunnery School. Was that being done also at Mitchell Field in New York?
No.
Where'd you have to go?
Had to go back to Florida.
And now, was it, when you say Gunnery School, was it for a specific aircraft that you would be a gunner on, or was it more general, like what weapons that the planes would be using?
You started out shooting a shotgun.
Ah.
At the range where they had the pigeons.
Oh, the clay pigeons.
Clay
Yeah.
pigeons you would shoot at from different positions. And I never shot a shotgun. And I ended up getting 20 clay pigeons out of 25. So
Wow.
I passed the test. For each phase of training, they would wash out maybe the bottom 7%.
Okay.
From there, they put the shotguns, mounted them on turrets, and you would guide the turret and the shotgun to the clay pigeons they were shooting from different positions again.
Okay.
But you had to operate the turret, so you learned how to operate the turret.
Wow.
And from there, it was shotguns. This was one of the most difficult things to do. On the back of a pickup truck, they had pipe around you so you wouldn't fall. And you went around the oval track with clay pigeons at different positions, and the sergeant would ride with you and he'd say, right field.
Okay. So you'd have to
And
position
say,
yourself
pull.
in that
Yeah.
direction.
And sometimes you'd be shooting, going straight at the clay pigeon. Sometimes in back of you, you had to turn around and shoot it, or the right or the left, and you're going around a curve. So I thought I'd watch out of that program, but I made it.
Good. That's amazing. Now that's sort of an interesting way how they simulated what you would need to do in real life with
Yeah.
with
But that was
operating
with
the gun.
shotguns.
With the shotgun.
But now we graduated to 30 caliber
Okay.
machine gun. We shot at targets.
Was it the same kind of setup that you did, but now with a 30 caliber?
No, just a stationary target we shot at.
Okay.
Well, there was a target that moved across the track, and you'd have to follow it, try to shoot it.
Wow.
Then we went to the 50 caliber,
Okay.
the same thing, had a moving target. And finally, we had to shoot from the plane. Well,
Was it a plane flying or was it a plane on the ground?
B-17.
Okay.
B-17 that just flew over Apalachicola in
Okay.
Florida, and you were supposed to shoot at logs that were floating in the water.
Wow. That's pretty amazing.
And the plane would tip, you know,
Yeah.
45-degree angle. I got a little nauseated, so I thought, they're going to wash me out because I threw up. Just couldn't.
When you were doing this in a plane with the shooting, the practice and stuff like that, were you like hooked up to something so you wouldn't fall, or you just had to keep your balance?
Right.
Wow. And was there more than one person in the plane who was also practicing?
Oh, yeah, there was one on each side of the plane, the waist gunners.
Okay.
And they would tip from side to side.
Okay.
But the final test we had was we had to fly in a B-17 and shoot at a target in the air. It was pulled by a Piper Cub or something like that. It certainly had a long rope to the target so they wouldn't hit the plane.
Yeah.
And they had different colored bullets. The bullets were soaked in paint, and you had a certain color that you were shooting, and they could identify who the shooters were that got the target. And I passed that one too.
So I mean, sounds to me like you were getting good at this.
Yeah.
So, but you must have known then that the ultimate time would come where you would be a crew member on a B-17 in combat.
After we were finished with the gunnery training, we were sent to Westover Field, Massachusetts, where we met our crew. We formed our crew: pilot, co-pilot, navigator, radio operator, waist gunners, and tail gunners. So, ball gunner. We got acquainted, and then from there we went to Mitchell Field, and no, Savannah, Georgia, Chatham Field, Savannah, Georgia, and that's where we trained in B-24s. We were assigned to a B-24.
Now, when you were doing this training, was your crew the crew that you were going to be with?
As a crew.
Okay.
We flew, I don't know how many missions we flew there, but we'd fly during the day, sometimes at night. Sometimes we would practice shooting from the plane over the ocean.
Was that normal to have you trained like where you'd be possibly on two different kind of aircraft?
Well, the B-17, we weren't assigned to a B-17. It was just, they used those for target practice.
Oh, okay. Okay.
We had no idea we'd end up on a B-17.
Okay. All right. So did you feel you were getting close where you'd probably be shipped out overseas?
Right. Didn't know if it was Pacific or Atlantic.
So how did you get to find the ultimate notification that you guys were going out?
We got sent back to Mitchell Field where we were ready to go overseas, and some people flew back in a B-17, a brand new B-17, and we went by ship. We left for New York Harbor on Election Day, 1944.
Okay.
We left on Election Day. That's November. So we couldn't cross the Atlantic. It was too dangerous. So we had to go south of the equator, over to Africa and back up to England. We were on the ship for 3 weeks.
So you knew at this time you were going to go to England?
To England.
Okay. Boy, that was a long trip.
We were on the ship for 3 weeks. That's why it took so long.
Wow.
In fact, we were on the ship for Thanksgiving Day. And they made the announcement that we would have turkey and all the fixings. But you had to stand in line for about an hour and a half. And by the time I got to the mess hall, I got Navy beans for Thanksgiving.
Oh boy. Yeah. How was it being on the ship? Had you ever been on the ocean before?
No.
How did you get seasick?
Well, I got nauseated, but I went to the PX and bought a box of candy bars.
Okay.
And every time I got nauseated, I'd take a bite of the candy,
Wow.
And I didn't get sick. The rest of the people were all incapacitated.
On the ship, was it all kinds of branches of the service, or was it just the Air Force, the Army Air Corps team that was on there?
I don't remember.
Okay. Well, that's fine. I mean, because I'm sure the ship was full, packed with all kinds of members of the...
Well, there was at least 4 squadrons, the equivalent of 4 squadrons that were traveling together.
Okay.
Because that's the way we ended up at the airfield.
Okay. And where did you ultimately wind up in England?
Well, we're about 65 miles northwest of London.
Okay. And do you know the name of the base? Was it Paddington? Paddington?
Paddington.
Paddington, okay.
Actually it was a farm that they took over and made an airfield there, and it was camouflaged.
Wow. So now how soon after you arrived there, was the whole squadron and the wing basically getting all acclimated for missions that you were going to be involved in?
Well,
or was there was no other air group there before you got there? Because they were building it?
I think we were at Liverpool.
Okay.
We docked at Liverpool, and I don't know what base we were at, but that's where we reported.
Okay.
And we saw B-17s there. And our pilot went into the commanding officer and said, "I think you made a mistake here." He said, "We're a B-24 crew." Mm-hmm. He said, "Not anymore."
Wow.
So he had to train to fly a B-17.
Okay. So you've had pretty good extensive training on all kinds of flights and aircraft, so
Right.
That's amazing. But again, you were at Paddington, and now you're on the B-17, that was your assignment as the crew. And I do know that the crews usually name their plane something. Did your guys have a name for your plane?
Yeah, the pilot was married, and he was expecting, and he had a boy
Okay.
while he was overseas. So he decided to name the plane after his boy,
Okay.
Dick.
Dickie Boy, I
He
think they
called him
called
Dickie
him.
Boy.
How
Right.
about that? Wow.
So he asked if I would paint his jacket. He had a leather jacket. We all had leather jackets, and a lot of people had their plane
Okay.
painted on the back of their jacket. So he said, "Would you paint Dickie Boy on my jacket?"
And see, that's because you had an ability with art and drawing.
Yeah, I went into London and I bought some oil and canvas, and primarily to paint logos that we
Right.
could put on the jacket. Our logo was Ellie Oop riding a tiger.
Wow.
So I would mass produce them and then sell them. But the pilot said, "Paint this jacket for me." So I painted the B-17, but I put a diaper hanging from the nose of the plane with a baby in it, just like a stork.
Boy, were you creative.
Yeah.
Holy cow. So what was it like when you started actually flying combat missions?
Well, they split up the crew with experienced crews.
Okay.
I flew with an experienced crew. But
And as a gunnery person, where were you assigned then on the plane?
nose,
Okay.
in the nose. And it seemed every time I was called to fly with a crew, something would happen on the ship. We just about get over to France. We didn't get in enemy territory, and something would happen to an engine.
Okay.
So they'd have to feather the other engine and come back on 2 engines, but you couldn't land with the bombs. So you had to drop the bombs in the English Channel.
Okay.
Well, that happened to us 3 different times.
Wow.
So they're calling me the jinx toggler.
Jeez. So that's pretty amazing that that could be the process too. Every mission wasn't successful that you were able to take off and get to your target.
Now they had a lot of engine trouble.
What was it like for the first mission when you were able to make it to your target?
Well, that was the day before Christmas, New Year's, or Christmas Eve day. And I was flying with an experienced crew again.
Mm-hmm.
And we were bombing an airfield in Karlsruhe, Germany.
Okay.
But I didn't think there was too much to it because there didn't seem to be, there were no planes attacking us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And in the distance I saw some red flashes. I didn't think much of it. But when we got back to the base, they were shooting red flares from the plane. They had injured people on board.
Oh,
and
so
I didn't
that's how they
realize.
signaled the ground?
Right.
That they needed medical treatment or medical care for that
Ambulance and fire trucks.
plane. Wow. I mean, this has got to be a scary thing. Were you scared on those missions that
yeah.
you got up there?
Especially that first mission when you realize you're over enemy territory, over Germany.
Yeah.
And you're just watching all around to see if there's any planes attacking it.
Did you guys, when you were on the mission that you were overseas getting to Germany, was there a lot of conversation among the crew, or were you guys pretty quiet the whole time?
There wasn't too much discussion going on at the time. 12 of the missions I flew were pretty routine.
Okay. Because was this 1945?
1945.
Okay.
Right.
And again, we probably
This
at
was
that.
December of 44
Okay.
and January 45.
I think maybe it was also a possibility that we had gained an upper edge on the Germans and had destroyed a lot of their aircraft at this point, which maybe helped you guys not have as much to do with fighter pilots.
It was their fuel.
Oh, because you were bombing the fuel dumps.
Yeah, and the oil fields in Plestia.
Okay.
Yeah.
I do remember.
So there was
hearing
a
about
shortage of fuel as far as the Germans were concerned. And they were using it for the tanks. So most of the planes were grounded.
that. Okay.
Instead of 1,000 fighters,
Yeah.
they were down to maybe 150 fighters. And they decided to attack one group of planes
Oh, I see.
at a time.
I see what you're saying.
In our group, 92nd Bomb Group, we had 48 planes.
And again, that was because the 48 planes were divided 12 per squadron, if I remember we talked.
We had 4 squadrons.
Okay.
I was in the 325th.
So when you guys initially took off, the object was to have all 48 planes in the air over the target. But sometimes, like you said, a mission had to be aborted.
It took almost an hour for the planes to get into proper formation.
In order just to start.
By squadron, right. Because there's hundreds of planes flying around in the dark because we took off early in the morning.
Okay. Wow.
And
so how long was a trip there up and back, a mission, time-wise? If you already took off and you were preparing by getting all the squadron ready for an hour before you actually left, how long was it before you got back to base?
that first mission, I think, and we actually flew into Germany. It's only about 6 hours round trip.
Okay. That's still a long time.
When we bombed Berlin, it'd be like a 9-hour, 10-hour trip. That was much further.
Because you were going deeper into Germany,
Right.
it sounded like.
Right.
Did you guys ever lose planes in the mission that you were on?
No.
So you guys are pretty good, pretty lucky.
We did. Well, 3 different missions that I went on, we had to abort. We didn't get the target.
Gotcha.
We had engine trouble.
Okay.
The first one was Magdeburg,
Okay.
an airfield at Magdeburg, and we got to the target, and the airfield was covered with smoke. They had a smoke screen up.
Okay.
So the bombardier couldn't pick up the target, so we had to circle around, turn around, go back, and get on the bomb field.
Okay. Wow, that's amazing how that all works out like that.
And again, he couldn't pick out the target, but the ack, the flak that they were shooting up at us was getting closer because they had our altitude by that time. And he still couldn't pick up the target, so we had to go back again the 3rd time. And by that time, there was an awful lot of shooting. In fact, a piece of flak just missed my head, above my head, and went by my knee through the plexiglass, and I had my hand on the bomb sight, the
toggle switch?
the switches,
Okay.
the bomb switches, and I had my hand on the switch to release the bombs, and a piece of flak came up about 6 inches away from my hand.
Wow.
But my navigator retrieved the piece of flak and gave it to me as a souvenir.
See, I always ask this of all the veterans that I interview, so I think now's the time I'm going to ask you this good question. Did you have any good luck charms with you?
No,
No.
I just prayed.
Okay, well that's a good one too.
I prayed for protection.
Wow, and it worked.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So when you got back to base from a mission, did you have, like, you didn't immediately fly another mission the next day, did you? Was there a time interval in between your missions?
Well, it depended on how urgent the flights were. The targets, the number of targets. But the second mission that I aborted on was to Nuremberg, Germany. That was a long mission.
Okay.
And that's where Hitler went. That was his resort town, Nuremberg.
Okay.
But we were on the bomb run, and one of the engines failed again. It had a broken shaft in the propeller, and when that happens, the propeller goes down at a tremendous space and vibrates the plane. So the pilot had to feather the plane, the propeller, and then he had to feather another engine on the other side to balance the flight.
See, now I would never even think
So we
about
had
that.
two motors, 2 engines working, and it dropped about 5,000 feet just in a matter of seconds. So he had to salvo the bombs right away on the bomb run, not even before we got to the target.
Okay.
And then the pilot told the navigator and me to get into the waist because that propeller could fly off and go right through the cabin where we were.
Wow, that's amazing. Jeez, what a story that is. So now when you got back from a mission, this was again probably 1945, and as we know the war would be coming to an end in May of 1945, at least for the German aspect of it. Did you get any rest and relaxation at the base before missions?
Well, I'll tell you what happens when we landed. We went to debriefing, and the he debriefed the pilot mostly, but occasionally if a crewman shot a plane down or something, they would debrief them.
Okay.
But everybody would get a shot of whiskey, a shot of scotch, just for relaxation, you know.
Yeah.
And I would always tell them, give it to the pilot. I didn't take it.
Wow, that's amazing, just amazing.
But on that Nuremberg flight, you know, we were flying back on 2 engines, and the pilot told us to get in the waist. We didn't know where we were. The pilot asked the navigator, he's carrying his maps through the plane, so he didn't know where we were. And the tail gunner yells out to the pilot, use evasive action, he says. They're on our target.
Wow.
And they were shooting aircraft, anti-aircraft shells, and he said the next one would have hit us because they had to use evasive action.
Right, because the ground was repositioning to aim at you in a certain way, and if you just go in that same direction, they're going to zone in on you then.
We found out we were flying over Stuttgart, the city Stuttgart, maybe at 10,000 feet. So they had a lot of anti-aircraft guns there.
Yeah. Was it cold on those planes inside when you were up at that high altitude?
At 32,000 feet, it would reach maybe 50 to 58 degrees below zero. But we had heated suits.
Wow. Well, at least it was comforting a little bit as far as that goes.
Yeah, we didn't have pressurized cabins.
Okay.
You had to have an oxygen mask, combination radio and oxygen mask.
Were you still at Poddington, the base, when the war was coming to an end, or was your tour of duty over anytime soon?
Well, it was in March when I was flying that the one mission. No, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay, because it was again at the end or the middle of like 1945, because you were there from November till.
Well, I didn't fly 25 missions. That was a tour of duty.
Okay.
I only flew 15 missions.
Okay.
Because I got pneumonia.
Okay.
And it was severe pneumonia. They sent me to the hospital. And I was in the hospital for 35 days.
Oh, wow. And was this in England in the hospital?
In England.
Okay.
And it affected my ears. So I wouldn't be on flying status anymore.
Okay. Wow. So did the war come to an end while you were still in England, or did you get sent back home?
There was one other mission I want to tell you about.
Okay.
We were supposed to go to Dresden, and we were carrying fire bombs.
Okay.
So that the first time I noticed that we had fire bombs on the plane.
Okay.
But we were over Holland, and the engine gave up. So we never got to Dresden. We had to turn around and go back.
That was a very famous bombing run, too.
Right. That's when the whole Air Force was bombing Dresden.
Yeah.
But I'll say it.
No, that's an amazing story.
Yeah, we turned around, and we had 2 engines again. They had a feather, both engines, and the
That's okay. I mean, I know that there's issues with the planes that the pilots have to compensate for things when things are going wrong with
this
the plane.
is, I can tell you, the headwind
Oh,
It was 200 miles an hour.
so you were hardly moving.
And our plane had a flight speed of 225 miles. So we were making a ground speed of 25 miles an hour.
Jeez.
So we couldn't even get back to the base. We had to land at the RAF base
Oh, okay.
in emergency.
That makes sense.
But something I want to tell you that was funny, we had a substitute waist gunner that day. His name was Crowbar, and I was flying in the ball turret at the time. And because the regular ball turret gunner was too big to get into the ball turret because it was an old style plane.
Okay.
But anyway, we're flying back from over Holland, and the tail, or the waist gunner Crowbar, yells out, "Bandits at 11 o'clock high." And I'm in my turret circling around. There's another incident. I didn't tell you about it, but the tail gunner says, "Them ain't bandits, them's ducks."
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm glad to hear that that's what it was.
Yeah.
So what? At least even in the heart, even in the horror of war, some little episode like that comes up, probably put a smile on your face at that
Right.
time and stuff, which is good.
Yeah, we were relieved too.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
So now, again, was the war, were you still in England when the war came to an end?
I was separated.
I know you said you had to go to the hospital for the pneumonia.
Right. Before that, I had been separated from my crew anyway, because our pilot was so good that they made him a deputy lead
Okay.
in a lead ship, so that they didn't need a toggler. They had to have a commissioned officer to sight the
Okay.
target.
I hear you.
So they didn't need me on the crew anymore, so
Okay.
I flew with other crews
Okay.
until I got the pneumonia.
Okay. And what was it like then when you finally came back home after all your missions were done?
Well,
Did you come back on a ship across
back-
the ocean again?
came back on a ship and landed at Boston this time, straight across the North Atlantic,
Okay.
because it was in July.
Okay.
And they sent me to Fort Sheridan for redistribution.
Okay.
And gave me a month's furlough, but they assigned me to California, redistributions. And they asked what I wanted to do. I said I wanted to fly in a B-29.
Wow.
Otherwise, I could have been an instructor at another air base or something like that.
But again, the possibility was the war with Germany had come to an end in May,
Right.
and now, but the war with Japan was still going on. So you could have been on a B-29 for operations related in the
Right.
Pacific.
No.
So did that ever happen? Did you get on a B-29?
No.
No, okay.
No, the end of the war, August, it was in August.
Right, right,
Well, actually, they dropped the bomb.
right. Wow.
And I was on a bus in Santa Ana, and I saw the headline in the paper about an atom bomb, and I thought it was something
What's
fictitious,
that? Right,
you know.
what's that? Nobody knew about it because it was a big
Right.
secret.
Didn't know what that was all about.
Wow, that's amazing. So when you ultimately got out of the Air Force, out of the Army Air Corps, you got discharged. Did you come back home to Chicago?
Well, when the war ended in August, they sent me to Mississippi.
Oh, okay. Because you still had service that you had to do? You weren't discharged yet?
No, they didn't. You had to have a certain amount of points
Okay.
to get discharged, and I didn't have enough points. I had to go to Mississippi. They assigned me to a squadron there as a clerk, day clerk,
Okay.
and
But you were still, again, in the Army Air Corps at this time?
right.
Okay.
But it was several months before they sent me to Rantoul for discharge.
Which is in Illinois. I
Right.
remember that was an Air Force base. Okay.
That was in November.
So you got discharged, and then did you come back home to Chicago?
Right.
Okay. Did you live in the same neighborhood?
In Blue Island,
Okay.
yeah.
Did you go back to school, or did you take advantage of the GI Bill?
I was going to sign up for University of Illinois. I was qualified. They said I had the credits, but they didn't have room in the dormitories, so we would have to commute from Rantoul to Champaign,
Okay.
which is about 20 miles,
Okay.
and live in barracks.
Okay.
So after being in the service for 3 years, I wasn't going to live in the barracks.
Wow.
I decided to go back to the company I was working for.
Jeez.
Hills Brothers still had a position open for me, so
Okay. Well, that's good to know. So you got a job.
they had an opening for me. So
And did you work there for a long time?
46 years.
Wow. Okay. Okay. And how about family? Did you marry?
I met my wife at that job. She was working on a temporary payroll. She was working her way through college at Roosevelt University downtown.
Okay. Wow.
I met her there, but she didn't want to get married for 3 years because she wanted to finish school and she wanted to teach at least a year. And she was a musician, excellent musician.
Okay.
She also played the organ. She was a choir director.
Wow.
So we had 4 children,
Okay, that's pretty good. That's really good.
3 boys and a girl.
So I'm glad to hear that then. Yeah. And so you had a good career, 4 children. How did you ultimately wind up here in Schaumburg?
We moved from Chicago
Okay.
in 1964.
Okay.
Moved to Schaumburg.
Which was like farm communities out here then.
Right, it was cornfields. And
Why did you pick Schaumburg?
well, my in-laws owned the building. They moved out here from the 2-flat, and they moved out here, and they decided they were going to go to Florida after living there for 10 years. And my wife says, well, I'd like to move into that building. And I said, it only has 4 rooms. It's too small. At that time, it was 3 kids.
Okay.
You have 3 kids in 1 bedroom. So she says, but I like it. It's almost an acre of land.
Wow.
And we got along with the neighbors because the kids were spending their vacations there.
Can you tell me where in Schaumburg it was located? Like what major streets or roads was it near?
It was right across from the golf course.
The one on Roselle Road?
It was called Golden Acres at the time.
I remember Golden Acres, yes.
So we used to call it Concrete Acres.
Oh my, it was hard. I
Because
actually golfed over there.
Yeah, the fairways were,
Yeah.
they weren't watered fairways.
So you lived right in that vicinity over
right
there.
across the street.
And again, you got in there about 1964 or thereabouts.
Right.
And I do remember from just a little bit of history of Schaumburg, that's some of the early developments that were in that area.
Right. Yeah, Hoffman was developing faster than Schaumburg at the time we moved. In fact, Schaumburg, where we lived, was unincorporated. And when they put a library at the intersection of Pleasant, and I think it was the church the street that went past the church.
There's a Bethel Baptist Church, I think.
They had a library there, and Hoffman Estates was going to annex our property. And we signed a petition, we want to be part of Schaumburg. So.
Okay. Wow. You were like an early pioneer of Schaumburg.
Right.
And I bet the population was so much smaller compared to what it is today.
When we moved here, it was 9,000.
Wow, I think it's like 80,000 now or something. Some
74,000.
74,000. So you know better than I do.
And Hoffman Estates was 12,000 at the time we moved here.
Okay. Okay. When you were out here in 1964, were you still then working at Hills Brothers, and did you have to?
Oh yeah.
So you had to commute to Hills Brothers.
Down those 2-lane highways, Higgins.
Yeah.
Roselle was 2 lanes, Higgins was 2 lanes. So.
Wow.
And they had stop signs, no traffic lights.
Yeah, that's hard to believe in today's environment.
Right.
With the congestion that is out there today on the roads and that. So, so where did your children go to school? Did they go over to Schaumburg High School? And
Well, Conant had
there you go.
Yeah, Conant just had opened a year before.
Okay, so they were in the district for Conant then.
Right. That was the only high school at the time.
Oh, wow.
Before that, they had to go to Fremd in Palatine.
Okay. Boy, what an amazing story of all the connections. And of course, it helps me because I do remember vaguely some of the development of how the area got started and everything like that, but you lived it. You lived it when it was nothing out here and stuff like that, so that's good to know.
And I probably got some of your golf balls.
No. Well, then maybe you can give them back to me. Did you enjoy golfing when you were there?
Oh yeah.
So you were a big golfer then, huh?
Oh yeah. I joined the senior league right away when I graduated, or when I retired.
Wow, that's good to know. So I think at some point what we're going to do is we're going to transition a little bit of this interview to a little bit more like general questions that can get your feelings about things that are going on today in the world and everything like that. This is a part of the interview that we call reflections. So how did, when you were in the military, how did being in the military affect your life?
Well, I've never been away from home when I got drafted. And I've had some worldwide experiences, met a lot of people, got acquainted with a lot of people. Actually, I usually got friendships with older people because my father was a hit-and-run victim back in 1930, and he had head injuries, so he was hospitalized the rest of his life. My mother had to take care of all of us.
Okay.
But anyway.
You know, on that same topic, here's sort of a question related to your service a little bit. Did you keep in touch with a lot of your crew members that were after the war? Did you have reunions? Did you talk to them?
We had reunions every 2 years. The 92nd Bomb Group had a reunion every 2 years, and I found out about it pretty late in life.
Okay.
But I was at a reunion at Memphis, Tennessee,
Okay.
where they had the Memphis Belle on display.
Yeah.
And my pilot and radio operator also were there when we had the reunion. And we went to see the Memphis Belle, and the pilot says, "Hey, Prib, why don't you get in the plane?" So I hoisted myself up, got into the nose of the plane, and he took my picture.
Wow.
And then, after he took my picture, I jumped down from the plane, and there's a guard there. He says, "You know, you're not supposed to do that."
See, you were still that kind of guy, I think, looking for trouble. And that was the nickname they called you, right? Prib.
Prib, right.
Interesting.
Short for Prib, yeah.
So are you in touch at all today with anybody that's still part of your team?
No, I think they're all gone.
Okay.
I know the pilot died and the radio operator.
Okay.
But we were also at reunions at St. Louis
Okay.
and Savannah.
Okay.
And that's where I got this shirt.
Okay.
At the Savannah,
I see.
they have their 8th Air Force Museum outside of Savannah.
Okay.
Uh,
When you were here, did you join or participate in any of the veterans organizations
No, I
like the
didn't.
VFW or American Legion?
no,
No. Okay.
I was pretty active in my church.
Okay.
Spent a lot of time at the church. My wife was the choir director in Oregon.
And what church was it?
Prince of Peace.
Okay.
Prince of Peace Lutheran Church.
Okay. So we're going to switch back a little bit to reflections a little bit. I sort of segued off on that because I wanted to get if you were still connected to any of your crew members and stuff like that. Here's sort of like a general question about your feelings and stuff. How has your military service impacted your feelings about war and the military in general?
Well, with what's going on in the world, I think you have to be prepared. And you need a strong military with the conditions that are going on.
I mean, you lived through an amazing part of history yourself when it was a complete world war that was going on, and there were tens of millions of people your age that were, 18 years old, 19 years old, 20 years old, that were involved in it. So you're absolutely right. Preparedness is important. So I agree with that. Here's sort of a question just since we are recording this, and again, this interview is going to be residing in the Library of Congress. If you had to tell a message to younger people today, what would be your message about military service?
Well, I felt that I was drafted. It was my duty to go. The country needed me. And I feel that you should be prepared to go.
Okay. And what about for younger people today to encourage them to participate? Would you encourage them to participate since now we have an all-volunteer military? Would you say then that that's still a good experience to have?
I think that it's an excellent experience because you get to see much of the country or even the world. Mm-hmm. I know people that have made a career of their service, volunteer, and the one I know recently is a captain in the Navy.
Okay. I mean, it is a true calling today, I think, for young people to join in and participate in the military in some capacity. So I can completely understand that. All right, we're going to transition one more time to what we call the conclusion phase of the interview. So since I've been asking you a lot of questions, here's your chance. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that I haven't asked you a question about that perhaps you'd like to bring up and share with everybody?
Well, I'd just like to mention that my brother, my oldest brother, was drafted in 1940. And he was a truck driver in the 3rd Armored Division. And he had an IQ of 148. And I thought, gee, what a waste of time. He could have been more than a truck driver. But he confided in me. Well, before he went overseas to be part of the D-Day invasion, he called me at the Mitchell Field to talk to me about it, and he was being shipped out. But he ended up at Normandy 3 days after the invasion with the trucks. They built bridges to get on shore. But he was in the Battle of the Bulge. This is what I want to mention.
Okay.
He was in the Battle of the Bulge. And he confided in me one day. He didn't talk much about it, but how, as a truck driver, he had to throw these dead GIs that were shot down and put them on the truck, just one after the other.
That was a hard story, I think, to hear of, but
Right.
I'm sure hard for him to experience. And we didn't talk about that before, and I'm glad you brought that up then, Emil. Thank you. That's very good.
My other brother never got overseas, but he was a radio operator on a B-29.
So you
Never
guys
got
have this
overseas.
air thing going on.
Right.
Well, that's interesting to know. Did you have any other things that we didn't talk about you'd like to mention? I'm glad you brought that up about the Battle of the Bulge and your brother. Very good.
Well, I think I associated with older GIs, I think, because I didn't have a father to take care of us. And even in grade school, I was associated with other people, other boys that didn't have a father. Their father died. You had Joe. Joe was one father. Well, his father had died. And the other one, Tom, was an orphan. And Ed had a father that drank a lot and would be missing for a long time. I'd go with him to the missing bureau, missing people bureau. I'd sympathize with them, so. But I did that in service too.
So, I mean, it's impressive how you're describing this. I know you mentioned about your brothers doing their part of the service as far as that goes. How about, is there anything about your own part of being in the military that maybe you've never told anybody about? Some story or something that happened? I know you're pretty open. You're pretty good with this.
I don't know.
Okay, that's fine. We're going to just a couple more questions. Is there anything else at all that we've not even talked about that you would like to take the opportunity to tell anybody who's going to watch these videos?
I think I covered a lot of it.
You did.
Yeah.
See, I think we did cover. I'm glad that we've gone through that. So that's been good. Here's sort of the final question that we generally ask. You being a veteran, what do you wish more people today even knew about veterans that they don't pay attention to or they don't understand?
Well, they should realize that ones that have been in action especially, don't particularly talk about what happened to them. Mm-hmm. In fact, I didn't talk about the service after we came out for several years. I'd say maybe the last 20 years, more and more World War II veterans did speak out about what they had gone through. So I think you have to be patient with the veterans.
Okay,
if they don't want to talk about the service.
That's a very good observation.
Right.
Very good observation. And the fact that you're even saying that for you, it's only been the 20 most recent years that you've been speaking about it, right, and talking about it, and then you've even acknowledged to do this interview where you've had the opportunity to tell even more about what went on with you and your experience and your family's experience.
Yeah, I think it's because of the fact that we went to reunions and there's more talk going on about the action, yeah, that we've been through.
Probably too because it's easier to talk among other service, right, people.
Right. Especially at reunions.
Yeah. So anyhow, so at this point in time, is there anything else that you'd like to say? Because we're going to get to our conclusion now.
Well, I enjoyed doing this, and I appreciate it, the opportunity.
And likewise for me, the opportunity to have met you earlier when we sat down and you shared with me your early stories. You shared with me your photographs and some of your memorabilia. You shared with me some of the newsletters about the reunions. So I really appreciate the fact that you were able to make me aware of those parts of your life too. So hopefully we're going to be able to get those parts into the video interview itself.
I especially enjoyed the experiences I had while in service. Got to see a lot of England, and I'll remember that for the rest of my life.
Good, and remember, you even got to be in Times Square with a poster of you as an image up there.
Right.
So you are famous then. Well, Emil, if there's nothing else to cover at this point in time, we're just going to go to our conclusion now. So this concludes our interview of Emil Pribula, Army Air Corps, World War II veteran for the Veterans History Project. Thank you, Emil, for your participation in the Veterans History Project. It means a lot to us as individuals and to the nation as a whole that your story of your military service will live on for all future generations to reflect upon. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us and of your military service. Thank you so much for your military service. It has been an honor and a privilege to conduct this interview with you.
I enjoyed it.
Thank you very much, Emil.
Thank you.